Welcome back and happy Thursday. This week we're focusing on 5 assumptions that you need to question so you can get better. And we need to discern between fact and fiction on these assumptions. And remember, we are playing off of the 5 symptoms that we talked about last week. So if you missed any of those episodes last week, you may find it helpful to go back and listen to those. And yesterday we looked at the assumption that sucks passion from our perspective, just leaving us sort of lackluster and feeling like we're trudging through our days, passionless. Now today, we're going to be talking about the false assumption that keeps us perpetually wound a wee bit too tight.
Mm-hmm.
So what's that assumption, Wendy?
The assumption is if I'm not on guard, I'm not safe.
This is a big one.
In the therapeutic realm, we tend to call this hypervigilance, where you are always looking for the monster under the bed, so to speak. Always looking for the thing that could go wrong. When you walk anywhere, there's minefields. Like, you are never letting your guard down, never relaxing. You are constantly scouting for danger.
Yes. So it's this self-protective behavior because another assumption is that there are threats all around me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's a variation on this theme too. You know, so we're assuming that a threat is about to hit us. The rug is about to be yanked up from under us. The other shoe's about to drop at any moment. So it's a very negative way of viewing life.
Well, and it's also a very controlling way, because the assumption is if I can see the danger coming, I can completely protect myself from it.
Mm-hmm.
And if that danger is an actual tornado, and you're just human, there's only so much you can do if you're in an open field, right? So the assumption also calls into, do I trust God to keep me safe? What does that mean to me? There's so much wrapped up in this.
Mm-hmm.
And when you've been abused or hurt before, and I know we'll talk about this too, there's that sense of a lack of trust in God a lot of times, or in his care. And so it makes sense if you feel like I am the only one I can depend on. I can't even trust God. I can't trust others. Well, then, I have to always be on guard, because it's down to me. There's nobody else. And if I'm not on guard, I'm not safe.
Right. And we can get caught up in this assumption when things happen, like just like you mentioned, like a natural disaster or things happen in life that leaves us feeling unsafe in any way. So this could apply to a lot of things, but especially so when we've dealt with narcissistic abuse, then what we're on guard about is other people all the time.
Yes.
And so this can have a very, very negative effect on our relationships, because that being wound too tight, and you know, it's like when you're laughing one minute, but then all it takes is some little something, and that's it. You're triggered, and the hair stands up in the back of your neck, and you take offense super easily. It's like you're conditioned to attack first.
Yes.
Because like if you attacked first, then you can avoid being attacked, or at least avoid feeling like a victim and to avoid feeling powerless. So there's a lot of anger that goes along with being wound too tight all the time.
You bring up a really good point, because this is a both and. Like, there's huge things to look at, but for the purpose of what we're doing here in just the few minutes we have, we're narrowing it down to, what are you being hypervigilant about? And we're talking about relationships and people and assuming the worst and the things that you actually are in control of to a certain extent, meaning how you move through the world, what you're looking for, how you are seeing people, and how you're treating them and yourself.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, if we're wound too tight and we're assuming that there's always danger, we're have the antenna up all the time, assuming that whatever relationship we're dealing with, there's a good possibility they're going to hurt us. You know, and you know what? In relationships, hurt does happen.
Yeah.
But part of this assumption, this assuming of the worst, is that we're assuming the worst in others. We're thinking about what their motives are and assuming the worst of their motives, which gets us into a lot of trouble, because healthy people won't stick around for that, because they feel like lashed out at, they feel attacked, you know, and it's not a healthy situation. So we have to realize when this is going on of what's going on inside of us when we're conditioned to attack first, to lash out, or to feel justified in lashing out because we haven't dealt with all the things that brought about this condition to begin with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's a lot of fears under that. This is an assumption. If you notice you have that type of hair trigger, or even a well-meaning, generally safe person is doing something and they really didn't mean to hurt you, and they are shocked that they just got a sort of attack from you,
Mm-hmm.
this is when you need to start challenging those assumptions and saying, what am I afraid will happen if I loosen up, take a deep breath, and just relax and just let people be people and let the things around me happen? What am I worried about? And am I truly in danger of being hurt? Is that real? Or has this just become a habit that I think and feel like, nope, I've got to be on guard all the time, all the time. Doesn't matter who's in front of me.
Right. And we take this tact because we feel powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas we felt victimized before, we felt blindsided or betrayed or whatever. So when we're wound too tight and we have this assumption going on that says, I have to be on guard to be safe, and we're assuming the worst, well, it's so damaging to relationships. And there's no room for discussion. There's no room for the benefit of the doubt. And so the balance comes in there because, yeah, there are some people who are unhealthy and you need to have strong boundaries or you need to whatever with that. But at the same time, there's some people, like you mentioned, that they didn't mean to. Maybe it was inadvertent. You got hurt. And so always assuming this posture where I have to attack, I have to be on guard, and I have to keep my anger because that's the only way I'll remain safe. That's basically going to keep us feeling lonely.
Yes. Well, and it's also bad business because part of what we do and the people we serve, they're either running their own businesses or sometimes they're really high up in a corporate environment. And you can't do that and last for a long time. If you are running a team and you have that type of hair trigger, and it could be, yes, of course, there are some employees who might be playing the system, but there are others who are honestly working hard and they just didn't know something, or they just hadn't practiced something, or they're just not sure how to do something. It didn't have anything to do with you. It didn't have anything to do with you being safe or unsafe. It had to do with them really not understanding. And what they need at that moment is leadership and shepherding and mentoring, and not that hair trigger, I'm wound too tight, you don't get to make any mistakes. And so that can really talk about noticing things and causing problems. Some of these other things we've talked about, you can sort of hide. Like on Monday, imposter syndrome, the goal is to hide that, right? But if you've got this wound too tight hair trigger, that's not something you hide well. That's something that can make your coworkers and your team feel unsafe around you and not necessarily trust you or trust your judgment. So,
absolutely. Yeah, really, really good points there. So we need to challenge this assumption by asking ourselves some questions. Like you mentioned, Wendy, what am I afraid will happen if I loosen up? And, is being in this defensive posture, is this truly helpful to me? Am I really protecting myself from something? Because the reality is we're not. We're still being reactive, which means the narcissist that hurt us in the past is still in control of our perspective. That's the bottom line.
Defending a healthy boundary in a healthy way looks and feels completely different than being wound too tight and going off on somebody. They are not the same thing. In the end, you might end up with a similar result if you're lucky in terms of somebody behaving or doing or not doing something, but only in that moment. Only in that moment. Everything after that can be messed up. So that is one thing that you're not. A lot of people come to me and say, well, I was just defending my boundary or leading in this way. And I'm like,
Yeah, it's never an excuse for poor behavior or hurting.
No. If you're reacting out of pain, you're not leading.
Absolutely.
You're reacting out of pain. So it doesn't mean you can't lead, doesn't mean you couldn't be an amazing leader. It just means that you really do need to ask, is this the way to handle this? Is it helping me? Is it hurting me? Is it truly defending a boundary that needs to be defended? Or is it just protecting a spot that's hurting inside of me?
Yeah.
So
So as we share this, I know we've said some hard things today,
Yeah.
especially if you start recognizing yourself in this. Please know
Mhm.
that we say this in love.
Yes.
Everybody struggles with this to a certain degree now and then in our lives and what we're going through.
All of us
So
react out of painful places.
yes,
The
yeah,
problem isn't necessarily reacting out of a painful place. The problem is not wanting to change it, not
right.
wanting to fix it, not wanting to repair relationships. And so you have to
Yeah,
see it first to be able to realize, yeah, this is something I need to start working on and talking to God about and dealing
right,
with.
right. And this is something that is overcomerable.
Hmm.
We
Yeah.
can move beyond this. We can
Yeah.
be better. And the other side of that, when you get beyond this, is you have such peace in
Oh,
your
yeah.
heart. It's a completely different way of living and perceiving, and you respond differently in relationships, and you'll see your relationships improve
Hmm.
so much more. You
Yeah.
know, so we want you to ponder this thought today. If I knew I was physically, mentally, and emotionally safe, how would that change how I live my days?
Mhm.
So join us tomorrow because we're going to wrap this up with our final false assumption that makes us distant and distrustful of God. And Wendy hinted about this already. And when
Mhm.
we're in that spot, and we might feel justified in being in that spot, but we don't realize how that creates a whole new huge set of negative outcomes. So we're going to talk about that tomorrow. So if you find yourself wrestling with this, and it doesn't mean that you've completely turned your back on God, there might be like aspects of your heart that you're holding aside. You're still going to church or whatever, still doing this, but there's part of you that you're holding aside. That's what we're going to speak to tomorrow. So be sure to join us for that one. So in the meantime, for today, we really encourage you to invite God into this process. Even if you're feeling distrustful, like we mentioned, and we're going to talk about tomorrow, still dare to reach out to Him and take Him at His word when He says He's going to do immeasurably more than you asked or hoped for. Remember that we're here with you on this journey. We're going to provide some guidance, some wisdom. We're going to poke at you a little bit and challenge you to grow and keep moving forward because we know that so much better is waiting for you. Even if you're just okay in this moment, there's much better that's yet to come. So keep moving forward. Keep taking that 1%, little step forward, that you're just 1% better than you were before. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share this episode to help some others. Make sure also to check the description because you're going to find some links to some helpful resources. You can also reach out to us through email at hello@AnnetteChesney.com. We would love to chat with you and answer whatever questions you might have or point you to some resources even. So keep going because we know, as we said, that your best is yet to come. We'll see you tomorrow.